Kill count, the Admiral asked, a smirk playing across his face as he leaned back in his chair, casual in his uniform that gleamed under the fluorescent lights of the Naval Command Center. It wasn't the kind of question anyone expected him to ask a young woman sitting across from him, her composure flawless, her eyes calm, yet piercing like the edge of a finely honed blade. The room was silent, save for the distant hum of electronics and the faint clatter of boots on the deck above. Every officer and enlisted man in the room turned their attention toward her, curiosity and amusement flickering in their eyes. She didn't flinch. Not once. Not even a twitch in her jaw betrayed the storm of experiences she carried in her memory. Instead, she let the silence stretch, the kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable because it carries weight, real, undeniable weight. Kill count, she repeated softly, almost as if savoring the absurdity of the question coming from someone who had no idea of the reality she'd lived through. Yes, the Admiral said, leaning forward now, his tone dripping with jest. Just curious. I mean, you're new here. You've been operational for what, 2 years? 3? How many targets have you taken out in the field? Just round numbers, nothing to worry about. The young woman smiled, a smile that wasn't warm, not quite, but controlled, like the calm before a storm. Do you want the number, sir? She asked. The single word, sir, carried no hesitation, no deference beyond what was necessary. It was respectful, yes, but firm, like someone who had seen more in her short career than most people would in a lifetime. The Admiral chuckled lightly, tapping his fingers on the polished mahogany table. I'm joking, he said. I don't need number. Just curious. Her reply came almost immediately, precise and unwavering. 32 confirmed kills, sir. 178 engagements where enemy combatants were neutralized indirectly through coordinated strikes, ambushes, or overwatch support, and 4 situations where civilian protection missions inadvertently resulted in enemy casualties. The entire room froze. Even the Admiral, with all his years of experience and unflappable demeanor, blinked once, slowly, in disbelief. 32 confirmed kills? She was barely 28, and the tactical precision implied by her additional statistics was beyond anything he'd seen reported by his top operatives. What? He asked, trying to mask his astonishment with a forced laugh. I was joking. I know, sir, she replied, voice steady. But numbers don't lie. They just tell a story. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Officers shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Some scribbled notes, some merely stared. Whispers began to ripple quietly across the room. How could someone so young have such a record? How could someone so composed carry the weight of that many engagements and remain human? I need a moment, the Admiral muttered, excusing himself as he walked toward the window, looking out over the harbor. The sunlight reflected off the waves in a blinding shimmer, but it did nothing to clear the astonishment in his mind. He thought he had seen everything in his decades of service. He had not. Not like this. She remained seated, posture perfect, gaze fixed ahead, unbothered by the stares and murmurs. To her, it was just another room, another audience, another moment of assessment. She had trained for moments like this. Not the question, not the setting, but the weight of scrutiny that came with it. She had always excelled under pressure, whether it was in the freezing mountains of Afghanistan, the scorching deserts of the Middle East, or the storm-lashed coasts during covert maritime operations. Pressure was her element. Her journey hadn't been easy. Born in a small coastal town, she had been fascinated by the sea from a young age, sneaking out at dawn to watch naval drills, reading manuals and tactical journals that most people her age found incomprehensible. She had enlisted as soon as she was eligible, facing skepticism, ridicule, and relentless tests that would have broken lesser recruits. But she thrived where others faltered. Discipline, intelligence, and instinct guided her every action. Her first engagement in combat had been a baptism by fire. The unit she was attached to was ambushed in a hostile zone, outnumbered nearly 5 to 1. Most rookies would have panicked, frozen, or made a fatal mistake. She didn't. She moved with precision, calculating trajectories, coordinating cover fire, and neutralizing threats with deadly efficiency. By the end of the operation, the enemy had been decimated, her team largely unscathed. Command recognized her immediately. But even more than the medals and commendations, word of her tactical brilliance spread quietly among those in the know. From that first engagement, a pattern emerged. She wasn't just lucky or aggressive. She was methodical, patient, lethal when required, but always measured. She knew that every decision could cost lives, hers included, and she bore that responsibility with unwavering focus. Over time, her record grew, each mission building on the last, each success reinforcing her reputation as someone to be respected and feared. The Admiral turned back from the window, still trying to process the gravity of her words. Do you ever regret it?" he asked carefully, almost whispering. The room seemed to tense, awaiting her answer, knowing that it would reveal a layer of humanity behind the deadly efficiency. She paused, thinking of the countless nights lying awake in temporary barracks, haunted by the faces of those who couldn't be saved, those who made mistakes, those she couldn't prevent. She thought of the civilians caught in crossfire, of missions that went sideways despite her planning, of colleagues lost, of enemies who had moments of hesitation and fear that mirrored her own. "I regret only that I cannot save everyone, sir," she said finally. "Every operation is a choice between lives. I make the choice that preserves the maximum lives on my side, while minimizing unnecessary casualties. That is the only regret I carry." A low murmur spread across the room. Officers exchanged looks that conveyed both awe and unease. This wasn't a soldier who boasted or glorified her kills. This was someone who bore them as a responsibility, a weight she carried with solemn dignity. The Admiral sank back into his chair, studying her carefully. "And yet," he said slowly, "your record is unmatched. You've done more than most teams, even elite units, could dream of. How do you maintain your composure?" Her smile returned, faint but controlled. "Discipline, sir. Training. Awareness of my surroundings. Confidence in my decisions. And the understanding that hesitation is more dangerous than action." It wasn't arrogance, it was fact, and it silenced the room further than any number ever could. People who had spent their careers in service felt a quiet, unspoken acknowledgement that they were in the presence of someone extraordinary. That moment, a call came through on the comm system. Orders were incoming, an urgent operation requiring immediate deployment. She rose gracefully, already preparing mentally for what was to come. "Sir," she said, "I will brief the unit and move out immediately." The Admiral nodded, admiration and a hint of apprehension mingling in his expression. "Yes, and report back safely," he said. He knew, as did everyone in that room, that with her skill, the odds of survival were high. But nothing was guaranteed in war. As she exited the room, officers whispered quietly among themselves, glances following her every step. She was a storm contained in a human form, a perfect fusion of lethal skill, calculated strategy, and quiet resilience. And for the first time, even the seasoned veterans realized that legends weren't just made. They were forged in fire, blood, and relentless perseverance. The world outside the Naval Command Center was vast, unforgiving, and waiting. And she, with her unmatched record, was ready. Her next mission would be more dangerous than any before, testing her limits, her wits, and her courage. But as always, she was ready. Because for her, this wasn't just duty, it was a calling. The call had come through at dawn, a high-priority alert that demanded immediate action. She barely had time to breathe, yet her mind was already running through possibilities, contingencies, exit strategies. The intel was sketchy but clear enough. A rogue faction had seized control of a coastal city, taking civilians hostage and preparing to move critical weapons to offshore locations. The Navy needed precision, speed, and someone who could operate effectively under extreme pressure. Someone like her. Her team assembled swiftly, each member a specialist in their own right: demolitions, communications, sharpshooting, close-quarters combat, but none with the combination of instinct, discipline, and lethal efficiency that she brought to the table. She briefed them with crisp authority, her voice calm but firm. Every step of the operation had been planned with the knowledge that the smallest error could mean catastrophe. "Remember," she said, looking each of them in the eye, "our objective is to neutralize the hostile force, secure the civilians, and extract the weapons before they're moved offshore. Minimize exposure. Every second counts. We do this right, or we lose lives we can't get back." The team nodded, their confidence in her absolute. They had followed her into firefights before, and each time, she had delivered results that bordered on unbelievable. And they trusted her not because of the record they had seen. It was her instinct, her clarity under pressure, and the unwavering calm in her eyes that inspired loyalty. The insertion was by sea, under the cover of fog. The city's coastline was treacherous, jagged rocks and hidden currents making the approach dangerous. She took point, her eyes scanning constantly for traps or ambushes. The team moved silently, the roar of the waves the only sound masking their advance. As they neared the target location, she signaled for the team to halt, crouching low on the rocky shore to survey the situation. The city was eerily quiet. Buildings bore scars of previous skirmishes, walls riddled with bullet holes, windows shattered, doors hanging off hinges. The hostiles had fortified several positions, but their patrol patterns and the gaps in their surveillance were visible to her trained eye. "Two entry points here," she whispered, pointing to the map projected on her tablet. "Primary route is heavily guarded, but faster. Secondary is exposed, but longer. We'll split into two teams. Alpha with me will take the primary. Bravo will move through the secondary to flank and secure the hostages." Execution was everything. Her heart rate remained steady, each breath measured, each muscle primed for action. Within minutes, the teams moved out. The first encounter came sooner than expected, a guard at a checkpoint. She neutralized him with a suppressed round, the sound muffled, the body dropping silently. Her team followed her lead, taking positions with fluid precision, clearing corridors, and securing stairwells with seamless coordination. Time seemed to stretch unnaturally. Each corner turned was a calculated risk, every doorway a potential ambush. Yet she moved as if the chaos of the operation slowed for her. Enemy combatants were taken down before they even knew what hit them, often without a sound. She calculated trajectories in an instant, her sniper rifle in her hands like an extension of her own body, covering her team from vantage points where others would never see a shot coming. Then came the hostages. They were held on the top floor of a crumbling building, guarded by 5 armed men. The team needed a distraction. She needed precision. With a small explosive charge, she created a diversion on the opposite side of the building. Chaos ensued as the hostiles scrambled, giving her team the split-second advantage needed. She moved with lightning speed, neutralizing 2 enemies with precise shots, while her team disarmed the remaining. Civilians were trembling but unharmed, and she made sure each one was guided to safety. Not a single casualty occurred on their side, proof of the discipline and control she maintained even in the heat of battle. But the mission wasn't over. Satellite imagery and intel confirmed the weapons were already being loaded onto offshore barges, guarded by additional hostiles and snipers. Time was slipping away. She calculated distances, wind patterns, and timing, every variable that could affect the precision needed for a successful strike. The team secured transport and approached the barges under cover of darkness. As they moved closer, she spotted a sniper perched high on a crane, scanning the water for movement. Without hesitation, she adjusted her scope, factoring in distance, gravity, and wind, and fired. One shot, perfectly executed. The sniper went down silently, and her team proceeded. Boarding the barge was a calculated storm. She led the charge, clearing corridors, neutralizing threats with tactical expertise that left her team in awe. They secured the weapons, loaded them onto transport, and prepared for extraction. But an alarm blared. Reinforcements were on the way. Hostiles had called for backup. That IT was the final test. She coordinated her team, placing them strategically around the deck, creating overlapping fields of fire. As the reinforcements arrived, she moved like a phantom, taking positions that gave her perfect lines of sight. Every shot she fired was calculated, every movement precise. By the time the enemy realized what had happened, they were overwhelmed. Resistance collapsed within minutes. Exfiltration was tense. Enemy reinforcements were still inbound, and the waters were treacherous. But she had accounted for contingencies, escape routes, and enemy response times. She guided the team onto transport vessels, evading ambushes and gunfire with instinctive precision. By the time they reached safe waters, the weapons were secured, the hostages were safe, and the enemy force was neutralized. Back at headquarters, the debrief was quiet but intense. Reports confirmed 0 casualties among civilians and team members, complete mission success, and critical intelligence recovered. Her performance was once again above and beyond what anyone thought possible. The Admiral, now calmer but still visibly impressed, approached her once more. "I asked you a question before," somewhat jokingly he said, "and you gave me the answer that shocked the Navy. Today, you've done it again. How do you manage all of this?" She looked at him, and for the first time, allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "Discipline, sir. Awareness. And the understanding that every decision has a consequence. I can't control the world, but I can control my actions within it." He nodded slowly. "We've always known you were extraordinary. But today, you've reminded us all why. You're something else entirely." She stood, ready to leave, already focused on the next mission. "Sir, our duty never ends. There will always be threats, and as long as I am able, I will meet them." As she walked away, officers whispered among themselves, admiration and awe thick in the air. She was a force unlike any other, a living testament to skill, courage, and unyielding determination. Her record wasn't just numbers on a page. It was the embodiment of precision, intelligence, and bravery. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sea in crimson and gold. She paused for a moment, looking at the waves that had become the stage for countless missions, countless lives saved, countless enemies neutralized. She knew more challenges awaited, more dangers lurking beyond the horizon. But she also knew that she was ready. Because for her, this wasn't just a career. It was a legacy forged in the crucible of combat, honed by discipline, and proven in the face of impossible odds. And the Navy, the world, and history itself would remember her. Her battlefield legacy, she thought quietly, almost to herself. That name, that truth, wasn't just a title. It was who she had become. And as she vanished into the shadows of the command center, ready for the next mission, one thing was certain. No challenge was too great, no enemy too cunning, and no obstacle too insurmountable for the woman who had already shocked the entire Navy. Her story, her skill, her courage, it was only the beginning. And to all who watch her journey unfold, subscribe to her battlefield legacy. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this is just the start of what legends are made of.